Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. Here's your flash briefing for the week of November 13th. City Council meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. If you can't watch, quickly catch up on City Council meetings by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Head to Howard Station Park on November 17th as we light downtown in thousands of sparkling lights for the mayor's tree lighting at 6:30 p.m. This year's theme is A Toy Story, and the evening will be filled with surprises as the beloved toys come to life on stage. Enjoy shopping, live window displays, musical performances, a visit from Santa and Mrs. Claus, and much more to get you into the holiday spirit. Curious to know more about the inner workings of the city? Here's your chance. The Citizens Leadership Academy is accepting applications. This interactive program is designed to give attendees a behind-the-scenes look at the inner workings of city government, with facility tours and presentations from city leaders and elected officials. Sessions begin in January and conclude in April. Learn more at cityofls.net. You can pay your Jackson County property, business, and real estate taxes at Treasury in the lobby of City Hall. Payments received at Treasury can be in the form of cash, check, or card. If you pay at City Hall, Lee Summit benefits by receiving 1% of all tax dollars collected. Treasury is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, with extended hours of 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. December 27th through the 29th.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those, and it goes through. It's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're going to go out and follow our sign guys, get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. These come up too. Perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple, quick.
It's Member Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Quite a few of us are getting questions. I know I've gotten a few questions about the plan, so I didn't know if, just for the public knowledge. I'm not a politician. I feel like I'm just an average person in Lee Summit. They have a football field set up. Inside these cones are their football fields. Our two-car garage is we're gonna bring the driveway back through here, and it's gonna go right here. And then, so my family has chickens. When we first got chickens, my husband said, don't treat them. We live downtown, and we love living downtown. These are my children. The first one's Lincoln, and Amira, and Sophia, and Caleb. This is a great neighborhood. Downtown is one big community, and all of the kids get together and they play basketball, and we like to walk to the farmer's market. Here, hold my hand. It's an easy walk, probably less than 10 minutes. The farmer's market has always been a very important part of my life and my family's life. As a matter of fact, when my daughter started kindergarten, I dropped her off and I was going shopping at the farmer's market right behind Lee Summit Elementary. And I was teary-eyed because she was my first and she was going off to kindergarten. And Terry, the butterfly lady, the one that's in the purple shirt, and she used to make little butterfly stickers for everyone, she gave me a big hug and was just so empathetic to the fact that my daughter had just started school. How are you guys doing? Doing well, how are you? Yeah, very good. A lot of the farmers there, they've watched my kids grow up. I love Lee Summit in general. I love that it still has a small town feel while embracing growth and the arts and diversity. And I feel like downtown specifically embodies that. My kids go to Lee Summit Elementary, and a lot of their teachers live downtown, and a lot of the business owners from downtown live downtown. So when we're out walking downtown, we see so many people we know. I lived in Africa until I was 5, and then we moved to the United States, and I've lived in Lee Summit since. Oh, a lot of my childhood, my mom was a single mom, and I feel like I was essentially raised by my community and being on council, and it's just such an important way to give back to the community that raised me.
I state your name.
I, Mia Pryor,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
this day of April 2022. The election process was fun. I got to go door to door and talk to people, which is my absolute favorite thing to do, is talking to people and learning about people. I even had people inviting me into their house for dinner or inviting me back to their house to meet their spouse. And I knocked on a door, and the lady that answered the door was my kindergarten teacher. So it was a lot of fun. Is it on? Hi everyone, I'm Councilmember Mia Pryor. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I have one on, can you not? Okay. Maybe I went. I love being a council rep for District 1. I know everyone says this, but District 1 is by far, in my opinion, the best district. Raintree Lake, that's part of District 1. I love that community. Actually, my husband and I got married at the clubhouse in Raintree Lake. I really love all of South Lee Summit. I love the growth that they're going to be experiencing soon and that they've already experienced. I wanted to say that if you guys have a concern, please come tell us what your concern is, because we can only address and help with what we know. We're there to kind of bridge that gap between constituents in the city, and we're the voice of our constituents, and we can go to the city and voice what their concerns are, what their ideas are. So if you have a concern, definitely make us aware. So my big priorities are public safety. That's always one of my top priorities. I've always wanted to make sure that first responders were supported. I think that that's super important to me and to many in our city. But also I wanted to influence the growth in Lee Summit. I wanted to influence the type of businesses we get here and the type of activities there are to do for our families. If we're going to continue to grow downtown, how important it is to focus on people that already live here and the infrastructure we already have in place.
Our first presentation tonight is going to be Assistant City Manager Ryan Elam, who is going to talk about that very exciting Farmers Market Plaza.
But I want to show you the most recent rendering, fly-through video of that. That's really the best way to kind of get a good sense of what this will look like in the near future.
To see it developing into something as big as it's going to be across from City Hall is super exciting to me. I can't wait for it to get built and to start welcoming people into what the farmers market's going to be, but also everything else that goes along with that development.
Okay.
You want to hold it? Don't drop it.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a good rest.
I'm just an average person in Lee Summit that wanted to be a voice of many that sometimes feel like they don't have a voice. Yeah, I'm not a politician. I'm just a mom that cares.
Call to order the Monday, November 13th, 2023 Public Works Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairman Demaro.
What did she say? Me? Oh, here. I couldn't. I didn't understand you, Carrie. I'm here.
Vice Chair Edson.
Here.
Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Lovell.
Here.
All right, thank you. First up, approval of agenda. Looking for a motion.
Chair,
Member.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman Demaro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. Approving the agenda. Next up, public comments. We have any public comments? Anybody know about? Moving right on then to business. Approval of the October 9th, 2023 Public Works Committee action letter.
Here.
Yes, Councilmember Edson.
I move for approval of the October 9th, 2023 Public Works Committee action letter.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Edson, a second by Councilmember Lovell, approving the October 9th, 2023 Public Works action letter. Roll call, please.
Chairman Demaro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, TMP 2843, an ordinance approving award of RFQ number 2024-015 for design services for remodel and repurpose of Fire Station 5 to Hoffner Welker for an amount not to exceed $309,320 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same. Chief Forbes.
Yes, Chair, committee members, Travis Forbes, Chief of Police. This is called Fire Station 5 remodel on here, but actually I prefer to call it the South Substation for the Police Department, and I will call that from here forward. But this project is part of the bond issue that was last passed, and we're very excited to get this project underway as soon as the fire department moves to their new station, just to the west of this location and the south. We will be engaging in an effort to convert this to a police substation for services for our citizens in the south. That it's a little bit far to go to our current headquarters at 10 Northeast Tudor. It won't be a full-service police station, but will offer amenities like getting copies of police reports or filing reports, and we will definitely be locating some uniform officers down there as well. So this process was to select an architect to start the design bid build process for this, and Hafer Welker was selected by a committee of folks with the city to be our architect to start that work, and this is approving the contract to engage him in services for this project. Take any questions if you have them.
Questions from the council? Councilmember.
Thanks. I'm doing too much. This is exciting. I'm so excited about this. Are you sure you mean Fire Station 5 and not 4?
No, it's 5.
Can I interest you in Fire Station 4?
We can talk about that down the road. I'd certainly be open to further substations if you're
Okay.
interested. So,
all right.
absolutely.
That's movement. That's movement. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Lovell.
So is this related to, I remember us talking about this fire station, the repurpose. Is this related to the most recent bond initiative that we passed?
Yes, if you recall, we had some discussions about building a brand new ground up building, and that was going to be fairly expensive, and we have a lot of projects.
And maybe you know this or don't, but so the design fees, like the bond, there's a set dollar amount to actually do the work on this station, correct? So where do we account for the design fees to do that before we've actually taken the money for the bond, or is that, I don't know who, Michael, Mr. Park, looks like he wants to answer
Thank you,
it.
Michael.
So according to Ms. Worlderman, we have the authorization to incur those expenses and get reimbursement through the issuance of bonds when we're prepared to issue those bonds, not just for this project, but for all those projects and the 3 questions. So while, yeah, the design fees may precede us selling those bonds, that's okay. Those are all still eligible for the no tax increase bond issuance that's to come at a future time.
And then, so the monies that we're using right now, that's like, what if we decided not to issue the bond, or like, is this being accounted for like in our current budget, or how are we?
So these are already in the capital improvement plan. So in a sense, what we'll be doing is spending, per se, some part of our overall balance, whether it be general fund, sales tax, it's all kind of commingled until we actually appropriate where those funds are coming from during their expense. And there's enough balance there to fund this portion of the improvements.
Gotcha. I was just making sure, because I know that part of the bond and, you know, how it was presented to the city was that as these came up, so now we'll have an opportunity to go design it, come up with some costs associated with it, figure out what that looks like, and then it would come before us as a body, like on city council, right? And then we would decide, yes, let's move forward and let's initiate a bond for this project, or maybe multiple projects or whatever that are on.
Yeah, it's my understanding it'll come as a package of several projects together, and I believe we're probably coming fairly soon to the city council with that first issuance.
Great. Okay, great. That's it. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'm very excited for this because I know a lot of South Lee Summit residents are ready for this. So, yeah, thanks for doing this.
Okay, well, seeing no more questions, I would entertain a motion.
I move to advance to council for approval TMP 2843, an ordinance approving the award of RFQ number 2024-015 for design services for remodel and repurpose of Fire Station 5 to Hefner Welker for an amount not to exceed $309,320 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
I have a motion, and that was a recommend approval, right? Motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Edson, moving TMP 2843 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion on the motion? None, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4 ayes, moving TMP 2843 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2808, an ordinance approving change order number 2 to the agreement with Sands Construction LLC for the Sidewalk Gap Program FY23 project number 718 for an increase of $219,880.73 for a revised agreement amount of $2,049,991.23 and to increase the project timeline by 113 days, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same. Perry Allen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Perry Allen, construction manager, here to present on this change order number 2 for Sands for the Sidewalk Gap Project. Most of these changes that are adjustments in the field had to be done for sidewalk installations in the gap locations around the city for our first of multiple projects. Required a lot of field engineering, which made some adjustments to accommodate all of adjacent property owner concerns, as well as to provide for the policy required sidewalk in the locations. So the changes that were made were to make adjustments for all of those variable factors that we run into. Had a very good contractor, Sands Construction. Hope they come back and bid our work again. Did a very good job of looking after the interests of both the city and the residents adjacent to the sidewalk installations, and to make adjustments. So we this is the outcome of that. Quality job.
Okay, thank you. And I would have to second that also, a very good job. I had a couple of comments. People didn't know what to expect, and when it was done, they were very, very happy.
Excellent. Thank you.
They kept coming back. One guy said they kept coming back until it was completely finished. I said, well, that makes sense. But he was just blown away by the details of how they conducted themselves.
Great to hear. We're very pleased with how quickly our contractor and our field staff responded to everybody on multiple calls and multiple visits to solve all their problems.
All
Anyway.
the problems,
Yeah.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion then.
Chair,
Councilmember Edson.
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2808, an ordinance approving change order number 2 to the agreement with Sands Construction LLC for the Sidewalk Gap Program FY23 project, project number 718, for an increase of $219,880.73 for a revised agreement amount of $2,049,991.23, and to increase the project timeline by 113 days and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Edson, a second by Councilmember Lovell, moving TMP 2808 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
4 ayes, moving TMP 2808 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2816, an ordinance approving modification number 1 to an agreement for professional engineering services for the Olive and Orchard Road and storm sewer improvements, RFQ 2022-060 with Kimley Horn and Associates for an increase of $119,101.50 for the amended basic services, with an amended not to exceed amount of $974,529.50 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Nakia
Freiberger,
Chapman.
is that how you say your last name, Freiberger?
Freiberger.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Nakia Chapman Freiberger, Senior Staff Engineer. This is a modification to the design contract for the Olive and Orchard Road and Storm Sewer Improvements Project. As Kimley Horn worked through the preliminary design, we learned there were a few design items that we would want to add to this project, and they include additional storm design along Forest Avenue to collect stormwater, draining to the proposed drainage basin area that was not previously accounted for. Retaining wall design that will need to maximize the volume of detention in that area. Sanitary sewer rerouting for a main that's cutting through the proposed basin area. And a Phase 1 environmental services for structures located on 315 Northwest Olive Street parcel. These services are due diligence items that the city does for property purchase, separate from right-of-way acquisition. The purchase of this parcel, however, will go through council as a separate item. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Councilmember Edson?
So I was reading would you talk about the retaining wall a little bit? Sounds like a really large retaining wall.
Yes, I mean, we are pretty limited in the area that we have to drain this water to. Rather than sloping out the basin, you can make those straight walls and you can get a little more volume by making that a more vertical structure. And it's been determined that we need to use that to be able to get all of the volume in that area.
Okay, so I know it's going along Forest, but can you paint a picture of where that's at?
Sure. So this parcel is at the south end of Olive Street. And it's right before all of the water from that kind of general area, south of Chipman, west of Douglas, and then south end being Forest, that drains under the railroad, under this culvert. And so this parcel is basically right before that culvert goes under the railroad. So all of the water hits there first.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. No, that's what I was trying to figure out, if we were putting it next to the road, between the houses and the road, to where the wall was going to go.
In order to not do that, because there's really just not enough space in that area, we're looking at buying this parcel down there to be able to turn that into a basin.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I'm going to piggyback on Councilmember Edson. Is that at the intersection of Olive and Orchard, that parcel right there? Is that where the retaining wall is going? Because I'm trying to visualize it too.
Oh, so the house at the corner of Olive and Orchard, that's kind of the area where we're seeing the structural flooding, which kind of triggered this project. The basin, so we're putting in a bunch of infrastructure that will take all of that water and take it farther south down to the end of the very south end of Olive. And there's a big piece of property down there that we're just going to take all of that and turn that into a detention basin, and that's where that retaining wall is going to go.
And it's right up the bank from the railroad tracks, right?
Correct.
Looks the railroad tracks, I should say.
Well, it's lower than the railroad tracks, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to visualize it in my mind too.
Yeah.
I think I know where it is. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So what's the area that this will help? How far away will this, that whole area is a mess. So I know it's just focused right there on Olive and Orchard, but entire forest is a mess with stormwater.
True.
Yeah, I live on Forest, so I see it all the time, and all the houses around me. The whole area is just a disaster when it rains. So how far will this help? Like, how far will it?
I don't have a exact outline of the drainage basin with me. We do have that in the stormwater report with this project, but kind of general area would be south of Chipman, west of Douglas, and I think a little bit south of Forest. Then all draining your east barrier would be your west barrier would be the railroad tracks. So
So it's probably not going to help anything on the other side of Douglas then at all.
No, so Douglas is actually a ridge line. So if you're on the west side of Douglas, everything's going to flow to the west, and if you're on the east side of Douglas, everything's going to flow to the east.
Okay, and then the Douglas improvement project isn't going to help either, so I'm not sure when that area will get helped, but okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all right. Entertain a motion then.
Chair.
Yes, Councilmember.
I move to advance City Council with a recommendation of approval, TMP 2816, an ordinance approving modification number 1 to an agreement for professional engineering services for the Olive and Orchard Road and storm sewer improvements, Douglas Street to Chipman Road, project RFQ number 2022-060 with Kimley Horn and Associates for an increase of $119,101.50 for the amended basic services with an amended not to exceed amount of $974,529.50 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, second by Councilmember Edson, moving TMP 2816 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Sure.
Oh, Councilmember Edson.
Dang. Thank you. I bet you didn't expect all these questions about this.
Happy to answer.
No, you did a great job. I'm just so excited about this. How many years have we been working on this? A couple? 1 or 2?
Yeah, more than a couple.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've been very diligent in making sure that, one, we started with a project that finally got funded, and now you're seeing it executed.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4 ayes, moving TMP 2816 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2825, an ordinance approving modification number 3 to an agreement dated February 23rd, 2021 for professional engineering services for the East Fork of the Little Blue Watershed River Stormwater Improvement Project between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and Alger Martin and Associates, Inc. for an increase of $275,600 for the amended basic services with an amended amount of $928,600 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same. Karen Quackenbush. And to compliment Councilmember Edson, I've been working on this for a long time.
Yes.
So we're seeing things come to fruition. That's great. Karen, good afternoon.
Good evening. Karen Quackenbush, Senior Staff Engineer. So Alger Martin has been working on the East Fork of Little Blue project for a bit now, and there are 3 areas included in the design improvements. Mostly, today they've been working on Area 2, which is located in the Vista del Verde subdivision. And we now have preliminary plans from them for Areas 3 and 4. I have a map. Could I get the overhead?
Can we get the overhead, please?
Get the overhead, please. Is there anybody in the back room? I was just going to show y'all a map of Areas 3 and 4. So Area 2 is on the right side of the screen, and that's where they've been doing a lot of the work. And then Areas 3 and 4, they're on the left. As you can see, they're primarily located along Todd George Parkway, south of Langsford Road, and then along 3rd Street on the east side of Todd George. So this modification will allow Alger Martin, similar to Area 2, to do water main relocation plans, incorporate those into the design, as well as some sanitary sewer relocation for those areas. We also included in this modification are the construction phase services that we will need when the contractor shows up next year. Like any project that goes out to bid, the contractor will submit everything that is needed to build a project, and this includes shop drawings for storm structures, pipes, the water main, products, fittings, everything that he needs to build a project, and Alger Martin would review all of those submittals to confirm that they jive with the plans and the specs. That's the main need for this modification. That I would answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Karen. Are we still looking at summer of '24, or has it slid anymore?
Currently, we are looking at a bid advertisement of May of '24 for all 3 areas.
All 3 areas, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions from the council members? I think this is a great, great locations, and you know, you've been over this. Help so many people, and just. So I would entertain a motion if there's no other questions. Yes.
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP 2825, an ordinance approving modification number 3 to an agreement dated February 23rd, 2021 for professional engineering services for the East Fork of Little Blue Watershed River Stormwater Improvement Project, sole source between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Alger Martin and Associates, Inc., for an increase of $275,600 for the amended basic services with an amended amount of $928,600 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, second by Councilmember Edson, moving TMP 2825 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Councilmember Edson.
I have a related comment. You know, we talk about stormwater with Olive and Orchard and this project and talk about the watershed. One of the most interesting meetings I've ever been to at City Hall was with Karen Quackenbush and George Binger and Michael Park, and we were talking about how the water flows in Lee Summit, and I got like a full picture of how it flows. And I think that ought to be training for new council members, because it really helped me understand all of these projects and how necessary they are. So, thank you.
No, I agree. And it's just like Nakia explained, the ridge line. Douglas is a ridge line.
Yep.
You know, that's things that you don't usually hear. And when you said that, you could visualize east-west. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4 ayes, moving TMP 2825 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2842, an ordinance approving modification number 2 to the on-call agreement for professional engineering services between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Olson Associates in the amount of $96,540 for professional engineering services for the I-470 sewer crossing design and authorizing the city manager to execute the same. Amanda Bagwell, good afternoon.
Afternoon, this is Amanda Bagwell, Senior Staff Engineer, Water Utilities. I'm presenting the ordinance for approval for a modification to the on-call agreement for professional engineering services. What this is for a sanitary sewer crossing across I-470. It's to the west of the St. Luke's East Hospital. Currently, what we have is a pump station, the Douglas Road Pump Station. It was constructed in the 90s. It serves the commercial development along Douglas Road. When it was constructed, there was no infrastructure north of I-470, which is its natural drainage route. It wants to go to the northwest towards the little Cedar Creek interceptor. But as I said, in the absence of the infrastructure, the pump station was put in. It pumps southwest to an existing gravity sanitary sewer service there. So what this would do, this would allow, with the construction of a sanitary sewer main from the pump station to the northwest and under I-470, it can drain by gravity, which would allow us to eliminate that Douglas Road pump station. This was identified in the 2022 wastewater master plan as a future project and a future way to eliminate a pump station, but it was recommended to happen when development occurs in that kind of south of Colburn Road and bracketed by Main and Douglas Road, like when that area goes. We're very fortunate in that the Discovery Park development is ongoing at the moment, and so to strike while the iron is hot, we thought this was a good time to start while they're laying out their sanitary sewer facilities to coordinate this crossing with their facilities. So Olson Associates is their design engineer, so we hired them under this on-call to do the design of the sanitary sewer crossing. Like I said, to coordinate the two pieces so that we match up. This is just for that crossing piece when the rest of the development goes, because it's in phases right now. Then we'll work on a separate project for the sanitary sewer line from the pump station and eliminating that. This was identified in the 23 CIP, and the construction of this crossing will be funded through the ARPA priority legislative grant that we have. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. This is this will be a non-intrusive construction, right? I mean, won't affect any traffic on Douglas 470.
No, it'll be bored.
Or anything? Okay. Any other questions from the council? And I would entertain a motion.
Chair.
Councilmember Edson.
I recommend to council for approval TMP-2842, an ordinance approving modification number 2 to the on-call agreement for professional engineering services RFQ number 2022-030 between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Olson Associates, Inc. in the amount of $96,540 for professional engineering services for the I-470 sewer crossing design and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Edson, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2842 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4 ayes, moving TMP 2842 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2827, an ordinance approving a sole source agreement for professional engineering services for the installation of precipitation gauges by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Alger Martin and Associates, Inc., for an amount not to exceed $197,000, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same. Karen Quackenbush.
Good evening. Karen Quackenbush, Senior Staff Engineer, speaking on George's behalf. So the city we first learned about this idea of installation of rain gauges at a floodplain conference with MFSMA. Kara Starlin and I have been working with Alger Martin for a bit now on establishing a reliable rain gauge network here in the city. There's a host of benefits that can come out of having precipitation gauges throughout the city. As identified in my key items, rain gauges would help us determine storm events that have come through the city. They can be used as a way to warn folks of potential road crossings that could be inundated with flooding. They can be used to calibrate our stormwater design projects. We can use them to help enforce our SWIPs, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, that are attached to every sort of construction project in the city. If we know we've received a half an inch of rain, we know we need to inspect our erosion control measures to help control erosion downstream of a project. So there's a whole host of benefits that come out of having a reliable rain gauge network in the city. And so we would start by installing these gauges on city-owned properties. The goal in working with Alger Martin is their level of expertise. It's not straightforward on where you ought to place a rain gauge to provide the most benefit, and so Alger Martin's level of experience with rain gauges will help us with that and provide the benefits. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have a number of gauges we're starting with, or is that Alger Martin is going to help us with that too?
Yes, we will be installing initially up to 12 gauges. So the level of detail needed in analyzing all of the data that comes in from the gauges becomes more complex as you add gauges. So for now, we're going to start with up to 12. I do have a map that kind of shows some potential locations for the gauges. So, and then also I would like to add that we know of gauges that are already in place, and we potentially could use some existing gauges that belong to water utilities, the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, and the Corps of Engineers. So I've identified kind of where some of those existing gauges are at. You can see up near, just outside of the city limits, up near 470 and Raytown Road, that's where the USGS gauge is located, and one of Little Blue Valley Sewer District gauge is located. There's another Little Blue Valley gauge near Raintree Lake. And then our water department gauges are located on the southern side of the city and in the heart of the city, and then on the northern end of the city. So we would like to start with fire stations and potentially put up to 12 throughout the city.
Questions, council? Level.
So the contract then, is that include, excuse my ignorance here, like a water gauge, is this thing like automated? Like it's actually sending reports, or is it like something you have to manually go check in these locations, or is it something more technologically advanced than what I'm thinking of?
They are fairly advanced in that they will send out, and really we could have
Like in
it
real time,
generate.
you could see like.
We can generate a spreadsheet, for example, that would tell us the amount of rain that we
Gotcha.
that it received over the course of the day. And the neat thing about it is it doesn't just report the day's rain. It tells you how fast it came, and that would potentially help with calibration.
Certainly great data to have, like, you know, if you had a flooding situation, like knowing not just how much rainfall came, but how quickly it came, just. Then also the other question was going to be, so I think we've identified like 12 locations. Does that fee include the hardware that goes with it? And then like if it.
It does not.
Okay.
So the purchase of the gauge itself would be separate from the $197,000.
So this is just for Algiers to tell us where they think these gauges would be best served for us. Is that correct? So the consulting?
That is part of it, where to put them. It also includes the analysis. Albert Martin uses a methodology known as the polythesin analysis, where it's almost like a weight of, you take what the gauge received at that location and do an average for the watershed.
Analysis of the.
Do all the analysis.
Of the technology.
Correct.
During the events. I got you.
Yes.
So it's ongoing expense then, or is it like?
It is not an ongoing expense. It is a maximum not to exceed amount, but they are scoped with services that would allow us to potentially move a gauge if we need to move a gauge, if we feel like, hey, we put it here, but maybe it's better suited over here, so they could help us with things like that, and just provide. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just make sure I understand. So this is like, because when I hear, once so this isn't the gauges would get installed, then those gauges actually provide us reports. We read those reports, or, so you were saying.
Both of us. Like I could read the reports.
And then but it's not ongoing, so I'm just a little confused, I guess.
So the consultant will not only design the location, but the systems. They are all remote operable and live data feeding. They will help us do some of the analysis. They'll also help us through the procurement phase, preparing the specifications, help throughout the installation phase. So what it isn't included, though, is the actual procurement of the equipment, the material. That will come separate. There's applications that will be used ongoing after installation to help staff with that. It's also accessible in coordination, as you said, other partners. So you have like Little Blue Valley Sewer District, water utilities. This will be shared data source. That's how it ties into the last April question on emergency preparedness. There's a lot of resource in having this kind of data.
Gotcha.
And so there could be some annual subscription to some of those applications. There's also a lot of shared software and applications through the region, whether it's through the Fed, and their resources that they have, where we start sharing this data back and forth to give us access to some of those analysis packages, or to some of the ways that we present and report that information. And I wouldn't say, no, it's not limited to the consultants, not even really limited to our staff and consultant, but even the public might have a need or a desire to go out and see some of this data, if they're got an interest in precipitation.
And then any idea what we look at for like just the hardware cost associated with it, or,
That we're not sure, but that's what our consultant will help us identify as the right product to deploy, and those kind of products that are easy to maintain and maybe relocate, because I'm sure there's a variety of products out there. We want to make sure what we also get is interoperable with other systems, whether it be Kansas City or water utilities or others, so that we can use a common application for analysis and evaluation.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Karen. I would entertain an motion.
Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
I move to advance to the full council for approval and TMP 2827 ordinance approving a sole source agreement for professional engineering services for the installation of precipitation gauges by and between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and Algier Martin and Associates Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $197,000 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, second by Councilmember Edson, moving TMP 2827 to the full council with the recommendation of approval. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4 ayes, moving TMP 2827 to the full council. Next up, TMP 2831, an ordinance approving an agreement between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and the United States Geological Survey for the installation and maintenance of stream gauges in the amount of $206,200 and authorizing the mayor to execute the same. Karen Quackenbush again.
Thank you. Along the same lines of having the precipitation gauges, we would also like to incorporate stream gauges with the USGS, similar to the precipitation gauges. Kara and I learned about the stream gauges at the floodplain conference when the USGS did a presentation on those. And so we would like to start with installation of a stream gauge on the Chipman Road Bridge at Cedar Creek, part of the Chipman Road project that is currently under construction. That station, at that location, it'll be a telemetered gauge that sends real-time data. It'll provide benefits such as inundation maps. You can also use the USGS platform. They have a very interactive website that you can use, anybody can use. One handy tool that they have is you can put in predicted rain amounts and it'll display the inundation map. And so what is an inundation map? Well, that's going to tell you the limits of the water surface elevation for a particular rain event. Just think about the fact that if you have a gauge in the creek and it measures the depth of the flow in that stream, that coincides with a contour, right? And we can create an inundation map and see the effects of a potential storm. We would like to use the stream gauges in concert with the precipitation gauges. We have a storm coming through the city, and we have data from the precipitation gauge. It would be really advantageous to know the depth of flow in the creek and how that coincides with the amount of rain. Let's see, so that's the first spot we would like to put a gauge. We have other spots along the East Fork of the Little Blue as possibilities. The gauge that's at Chipman Road there, and then the East Fork are up in here. Those are possible locations for the other gauges. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. How would these gauges be installed in the creek? Would they be actually in the stream bed or on the bank, or?
They will be attached to the culvert. I have not gone out into the field to see one of these gauges, see what they look like, but I can tell you that the USGS will do the installation of the gauge.
And will the Geological Survey, would they use this information also in their?
They will provide real-time data on the creek. That they do have a gauge that is at Little Blue. It's on Little Blue River at Lee Summit Road. So that is the closest USGS stream gauge to Lee Summit, and that does provide information to us up in the Oak Ridge Meadows part of the city.
Questions? Any other questions? Councilmember Edson.
So, okay, let's just talk about that one, okay? So, what do you learn? I guess I'm not getting what you learn from having that, other than the creek's high, the creek's low. What do you get from the information?
So you can get the information that would be, I would say, that would be the most useful to us would be the inundation maps that show the level of flooding along a creek. Also calibration of models. It would be really handy to take precipitation gauges that told us, hey, that was a 50-year storm event that just came through for that creek, and here's the water surface elevation in the creek. And that could be useful for just designed a project. Did the real here and now data match the modeling that our consultant gave us? Or if we know we're going to have a future project, it will help us determine a culvert crossing under a particular road. This is how the road, this is what the road sees.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. This is what happens when you get people who are way smarter than us talking to us. Yeah.
I think it can really help quite a bit in emergency management and flood predictions. You know, you're starting to watch the stream levels go up. And just because you haven't had precipitation or massive precipitation in an area like maybe it's Oak Ridge Meadows, it could be further upstream in the watershed. And you can kind of track to see where those water levels are going. And you know, based on reports of flooding, now you kind of correlate that to a certain stream water elevation, and you can say, well, expect flooding once you start to get there again, or we're starting to see it rise as it hits each gauge down the line. So it can help us in our response and help provide some of that awareness to the public if they're soon to be flooded for a particular event.
Yeah. Well, and explain to them later what happened. You know, that's always good too. I think we could take like a
Okay.
Go tromp around.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
I love going out in the field. My family kind of, I'm like, oh, it's pouring rain, I should go outside. And they're like, wait, what? And so I love going out in the field, especially in the middle of the rain. I want to see how things are doing.
So with this information, then we can be proactive when we, for example, you know, on Anderson, if we see that it's going to be, you know, halfway up a car, you know, the length or the thickness of a car, not thickness, height of a car.
The height, sure, sure.
We could be proactive and put up barriers and keep people out of danger. In other words, otherwise they may not pay attention or they may not know. I mean,
Sure.
they know it's raining.
As you know, it's very flashy in Lee Summit. When we flood, it comes through and then it's gone, and it has already drained. And the rain gauges will help us. Hey, look, we've gotten a lot of rain, and the forecast says there's more coming. And so we can absolutely be proactive and know ahead of time, just in case, right? Have those barricades just on the edge, you know, right there, and then we can turn them as needed. just to keep everybody safe. Yes.
Would save lives, actually. Any other questions from the council?
Here.
Yes, Councilmember Edson.
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2831, an ordinance approving an agreement between the city of Lee's Summit, Missouri and the United States Geological Survey for the installation and maintenance of stream gauges in the amount of $206,200 and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Edson, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2831 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you, and the motion passes with 4 ayes. Next up, TMP 2835, an ordinance approving a deed restriction for Pleasantly Park regarding restrictions limiting the use of the park property to outdoor recreational use and maintaining and operating the park property consistent with 43 CFR Part 17 in perpetuity. Perpetuity, I cannot say it. Boy, yeah. And authorizing the mayor to execute the same. Scott Eisen, good afternoon.
Thank you. Scott Eisen, Chief Counsel of Infrastructure and Recreation for the city. The ordinance before you today would approve a deed restriction on Pleasantly Park. Pleasantly Park is a neighborhood park that encompasses about 16 acres. It's located in the Mission Woods and the Hinsdale subdivision of the city. The Parks Department applied for and received a $250,000 grant from the Department of Interior Natural Park Services, administered through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Under that grant, the Parks Department was able to make significant improvements to Pleasantly Park. Some of those improvements included playground renovations with nature theming, a park shelter installation, sports court renovation, trail improvements, ball field upgrades, ADA improvements, and nature interpretive play areas. One of the conditions for this grant, as with most grants that the city receives, is that certain conditions would apply to that. That be that a deed restriction be placed on Pleasantly Park, that it be maintained in perpetuity as an outdoor recreational area, and also that certain conditions of the Code of Federal Regulations would apply again in perpetuity to this park. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Scott, any questions from the council? I know the finished project of Pleasantly was very, very well done. It is.
I agree.
One of the nicer parks, actually. I would entertain a motion if there's no questions.
Chair?
Yes, Councilman.
I'd like to take this. I grew up at this park, so.
Did you really? Wow.
Own many of my athletic skills, not many of them. I recommend to City Council for approval, TMP 2835, an ordinance approving a deed restriction for Pleasantly Park regarding restrictions limiting the use of the park property to outdoor recreational use and maintaining and operating the park property consistent with 43 CFR Part 17 in perpetuity and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2835 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes with 4 ayes. Next up, TMP 2836, an ordinance approving a license agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and the Little Blue Valley Sewer District for repairs to the Little Blue Valley Sewer District's existing sanitary sewer through Eagle Creek Park and authorizing the mayor to execute the same. Mr. Eisen again.
Again, Scott Eisen, Chief Counsel of Infrastructure and Recreation for the city. This ordinance would approve a license agreement between the city and the Little Blue Valley Sewer District. This is in the area of Eagle Creek Park. It's about a 26-acre park that's located near the Eagle Creek subdivision and consists mainly of a trail that runs through the park area there. The Little Blue Valley Sewer District approached the Parks Department about accessing their current easement through the park in order to do some maintenance on a sewer line that is in a state of failure at this point in time. The repairs that are contemplated by the sewer district are going to be a trenchless lining method. I think the Public Works Committee has seen that before. The city uses instituform also to line sewer lines so that we can line them without having to dig them up. That's obviously a big advantage in this situation because we are dealing with park property, trees right next to a trail. So this will be a trenchless method of rehabbing the existing sanitary sewer line that is owned and maintained by the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, excuse me. In negotiating this license agreement with the Little Blue Sewer District, we made it clear to them that this was park property, that people don't like to see trees cut down on park property. They don't like to see damage to park property. Whenever park property is disturbed, people talk about it. So we made it clear to them that there were certain expectations that need to be met on this property, and they were completely understanding of those conditions. We were able to successfully work through these conditions with them. They understood that there's only certain hours that they can work on the park. There's only certain areas that they can access the park through and use the park for. And they also need to replace any trees of a 4-inch or greater caliber that is removed that's outside of their easement. They will provide notification to the adjoining property owners about this work, letting them know what's going on. They will also provide us prompt notice of any work that is occurring out there so we can make sure and update on social media and through other means to the public what is going on the park property. Like I explained to them, if this was some other area of the city that's not a park, we've done this before in the out off of where the old landfill is, you know, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But when we're dealing with park property that's in people's backyards that people know is a park property, you know, we do need to keep the public informed, and we need to make sure the land is returned back to the state that it was previously. And they have been great to work with, and they've agreed to it and already executed the license agreement. The next step would be for the approval by, recommendation for approval by this committee, and then passage by the full city council so the mayor can execute that so they can start working on this sewer line. This has been an issue that they have moved to the forefront due to the state of failure of this line, so we've been working at an aggressive pace with them in order to try to get this line replaced. And again, they've been great to work with and understanding of what our concerns are. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the council? And a motion, then. Thank you.
Chair, I move to recommend to council for approval TMP 2836, an ordinance approving a license agreement between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and the Little Blue Valley Sewer District for repairs to the Little Blue Valley Sewer District's existing sanitary sewer line through Eagle Creek Park and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Edson, moving TMP 2836 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes. Next up. Okay. No. We- Okay. Yep.
Not to discredit.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, be safe. Next up, the Transit Services presentation, Susan Berry.
Good evening, Susan Berry, City Traffic Engineer, here to talk to you about transit. We do this presentation in November every year, so some of this will look familiar, but there's some new information also. So just so you know, we have 2 types of transit. We have the Lee Summit Express, which is the trips down to Crown Center downtown area. We do 2 a.m., 2 p.m., and then there's 1 reverse commute each of those times. Those are basically for commuters, Monday through Friday. That is still being provided at no cost. If you remember, KCATA waived all costs with their bus service in, I believe, 2020 or 2021, and that will continue through 2024. The route has not changed. There is a stop at Unity Village. More information can be found on KCATA's website. It's bus route 550. Ridership, I just have 3 years of ridership data. Essentially, ATA told us we have about 34 riders per day, which averages out to $8 a person. We do have CARES Act funding. We still have money in that account, so right now that is being funded 100% by CARES Act funding. When that CARES funding is run out, it'll be a 50-50 split for that service. So the ridership is.
Can we go back to that?
Yes.
So KCATA has provided they provide free transportation.
Yes.
Explain the funding on Lee Summit Express again. Go back.
So this is Lee Summit funds this, but since ATA, all their transit is free, it was decided that the express routes would be free as well.
But we're funding it out of CARES money?
The reference to free is regarding fare. So
Right.
the passenger's not paying a fare system-wide on ATA's commuter services or express services. So we were allocated at near the end of 2021 by formula CARES funding for transit. It can only be used on transit.
Okay.
With CARES funding, it is 100%, no local match, no federal funds of any other pot can be applied if we use the CARES funding. When we went to the Federal Transit Administration to go ahead and obligate those CARES funds, we obligated them for our existing transit operational service costs, as well as a small set aside for some fleet replacements associated with the OATs. At that time, we anticipated we would get maybe 2 to 3 years worth of operational expenses, and that's what's been paying for all of our transit expenses to date. And actually, we still have, we'll see how many more months left before it's exhausted. The other, now going prior to CARES funding and after our CARES funding's exhausted, we also get, because we're a small urbanized area, we're one of only two. The other is the Kansas City urbanized area, which includes Independence and Blue Springs, all those other smaller cities surrounding Kansas City. So as a small urbanized area, we also get federal transit funds. It's called Section 5307 funding. Those funds we redirect back to KCATA as our administrator of funds, so they do all the reporting requirements and they can apply those federal funds to our local match. Those funds have a required 50% local match contribution for all operating expenses and a 20% local match for all capital expenses. When we enter a contract with ATA for these services, they take a little blended approach. So it doesn't all go towards operation because we don't have any capital, but they use some of their maintenance needs, bus replacements as capital. And so we end up with a blend where we're paying close to 40% of the share of that cost of service, if that answers some of your question.
Yeah, thank you.
And so we'll go back to that same ratio of service costs versus federal aid contribution.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
So this slide just kind of shows you the ridership up, down. Overall, it is slightly going up, but a lot of people are working remotely, and so that those trips downtown, I think, are still going to stay down. We are authorized for 3 daily trips in the morning and 3 in the evening, but until ridership goes up, we'll keep it at 2. And then the other program we have is the on-demand Ride KC. That's operated by Oats. It is available to all Lee Summit residents. It's not just for older adults, as long as your trips originate and end in Lee Summit. There is an advance reservation required, at least 24 hours, preferably 48. Cost is $1.50 per trip, and that the hours are on the screen. Currently, we have 6 vehicles, and I added the phone number on there for anybody watching at home so they know how to make their reservations. This continues to be popular. We are fully utilizing the service. There have been denials. There haven't been an exceptional amount of denials. Sometimes people call too late. Sometimes people are not flexible with where they need to go and what time. For example, I want to go to Walmart Wednesday at 10 a.m. and maybe 10 a.m.'s not available. Can you do noon? Can you do 2? No, I have to go at 10. So those are included in the denial numbers. And so when talking to the people at Oats, they feel comfortable that we have the appropriate amount of vehicles and drivers at this time to meet the demand in Lee Summit. same thing, that's just a graph kind of showing things. So looking at other transit initiatives in the area, I was asked to look into IRIS. So IRIS is a new service provided by KCATA within Liberty. I think it's Liberty and Kansas City. A lot of it's north of the river. This is an active link in the presentation that will take you to the IRIS website. Basically, those fares, they go by zone. So let's say Liberty is its own zone, and maybe the Berry Road area is its own zone. But they're $3 per person per trip within a zone, or $4 per person per trip zone to zone. And then there's some other information, $10 to and from KCI Airport from any Northland zone. So all that information's on their website. I just share this to kind of show you what a comparable service is. This is about as close as I could get to a comparison to what we provide here in Lee Summit for $1.50. And then I looked at other kind of neighboring cities in Jackson County. A lot of them are only open to senior citizens. Blue Springs is 60 and above, or individuals with disabilities. They charge $3, and they're only operating 4 hours a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Grain Valley, it's only $1 a stop, but there's a 65 and older, and it only runs from 10 to 2. So in comparison, we have a pretty good service at a pretty good price. The next thing on this slide is, I'm going to click this and see if this works. So there's been a planning initiative being done by Mid-America Regional Council. This is all kind of tied to the World Cup. And you could look into this a little differently, but with the World Cup coming in 26, there's been a lot of focus on how to get people from the airport to downtown, to the stadiums, and so there's been this whole planning study done, and this link gives you all kinds of information, kind of the frequency they're looking at for bus trips. I'm not going to go through all this, but there's some information about potential bus locations. So lots of information on this link, so if you feel inclined to dig in a little deeper, it's on there. So then what's next? As far as our on-demand ridership, we'll continue to monitor how much that grows, how much, if we need additional vehicles, we'll look into that. But as I said previously, we're doing pretty good right now. We do have, I believe, $280,000 set aside to buy new vehicles. That originally was planned to buy 6 new vehicles, and with vehicle prices going up, that is looking like it's only going to get us 3. They're running about $85,000 for a minivan equipped with a wheelchair lift, and same thing with the transit. So they're moving away from the small buses and moving more to minivans. They're more drivable. They're easier to get into every space. There's certain places they have restrictions that they don't want their bus drivers to back up in those big giant buses, and so they send people different places in a minivan versus a bus for that reason. So they're looking at 2 minivans and 1 transit van as a replacement for 3 of the older vehicles that we have. So that will be coming. They purchased those, I believe, through the state of Missouri's vehicle acquisition, something or other. And then as far as KCATA goes, we stay involved in any sort of planning efforts regarding transit. We're always looking into when we need to start the fixed route service. I know I've got a couple slides coming up that'll show you where those fixed routes are, but as of right now, I don't think the need is there. And so that's just something we'll continue to monitor. We'll monitor concerns received about transit services. I talked about denials. Occasionally we get calls. Anytime someone wants to send their kids to school on the bus, that's not allowed. Usually the denials are if they call too late or if they're not flexible. If they give them a decent amount of time, they can usually make it work. Maybe they might have to sit at their doctor's office an extra hour just to get there in time, but usually if they can be flexible, Oats can usually get them in. And then the big thing is new contracts for 2024. Unfortunately, everybody's been seeing increases in prices. Salaries especially has hit Oates and KCATA hard. They've had to increase their salaries, add benefits to try to keep drivers, and so we are currently negotiating those costs with both agencies. Right now, we're looking at an increase with Oates of a significant increase if we keep the cost at $1.50 per trip. And so we're looking at the possibility of upping that to $3 a trip, which is still comparable to Iris, and probably still significantly cheaper than Uber or Lyft. And so that's something that will keep our hourly rate down with Oates. And so that we're still having those negotiations right now. But to just kind of give you a heads up that that is likely that rate hike probably is going to happen unless, unless the council feels that they would prefer to keep it at $1.50 and then we pay a higher hourly cost. So just for your information, currently this year it's $40 per hour and it will be going to $68 an hour for Oates. So more information to come on that.
I do have, if we can stop right there and talk about Oates just for a second. Do we track the denials and what happens after somebody is denied? And do we track that? What happens? Do they get other transportation? Do they call back and say, yes, I can go to Walmart at 10 o'clock? Or?
We personally do not. Oates, they track it as a denial. They don't follow up with how they got where they were going. So, I just get the information from the manager of Oates, and she gives me as much as she can, but we don't really know how they got where they're going. If they changed their appointment, if they used another, found a neighbor to drive them or something like that, we don't have that information.
And then on the new vehicles, the transit vans and the regular vans, do we get credit for the vehicles we take out of service, assuming we're going to take the transit buses out of service if we get new vehicles?
We do not get credit. Those will go back into the fleet to be used by Oates, but I don't believe we get credit for them.
So is the 200 or the 85? I wrote down 85,000 per van, 85,000 per unit.
Correct. 85,000 for a minivan, 82,000 for a transit.
So that cost is entirely on us, but then we give when we replace vehicles, we give the vehicle back to them and don't get anything for it?
No, so that cost is not entirely on us. So what's been set aside is through CARES money. So while we use CARES money for the acquisition of those fleet, that's 100% CARES. No local cost, none of our federal transit dollars set aside expense. Normally, we would be purchasing those vehicles 20 cents on the dollar using federal funds, and then they have a certain life expectancy. Now, if we are to reclaim those vehicles prior to their life being expended, then there is a payback. Otherwise, what it usually happens is they no longer have any capital value. After, I'll just assume 7 years, that's the life of the van. At that point, what KCATA does is says, well, you no longer have any obligation to see those vehicles in service due to your tied federal funds. They give the option to just convey those back to the operator like Oates, say, if you can use these, whatever, otherwise they have no value. There's no value left from the standpoint of our initial investment because they've been used for their purpose. They have, 200,000 miles, however many, they just don't have any resale. So there's no lost interest of the city. Okay. Now, I think the inflationary cost of these, we initially thought we could replace all 6. They are still titled in the city's name. It's just co-titled with Oates. And now it looks like we're only able to buy 3. We'll see how many beyond that, because we can't buy a whole vehicle with the CARES money. We can't buy the vehicle at all with CARES. We'd be looking at buying 3 more vehicles if it's $80,000 a piece. At 20% would be our local cost for those. The other 80%, because it's capital, would be coming from the federal government.
So the CARES Act is beneficial in that we are able to pay the full price, but if we weren't, CARES Act is at, the balance is at zero, then we'd be 20 cents on
20 cents on the dollar. And those costs aren't like a normal van you would pick up off a lot, right? So those are outfitted with radio systems and branded, and they have the accessible features to them. So if, you know, you got a van lift, those are all integrated into the design of that vehicle.
And one more question, Susan, and that is the wages that Oates pays that are offering, and you said up to $68 an hour. Is that a negotiation, or is that just the reasoning behind that just to acquire and keep drivers? I mean, are they negotiating, or?
Yeah, that's not their driver wage. That $68 an hour is the total cost per hour for operation. That's the maintenance cost of the vehicles. That's, you know, their administration, their overhead, their property. That's the shared total cost in an hourly rate. And then what we do is we contract for total number of vehicles, total number of hours per day, number of days per week, you know, weeks per year in operation to give us a total not to exceed amount. And then if demand goes lower and they're not using all 6, we don't pay for 6, if that makes sense. So it's an hourly rate of cost of service, total package cost. And I believe all of them are typically unionized labor workforce, whether it be the drivers, the mechanics, all of them in that particular industry are. So they take care of their own labor agreement negotiations. We have no role in that.
Well, I could see Councilmember Pryor has got very lot of experience driving a van with a lot of people in it. $68 an hour.
Well, and Oates provided us with another alternative to eliminate one of the buses, and we didn't even present that because I didn't think that would be amenable to the council. I think 6 is the right number, and so that is another option to keep costs down, is to eliminate one bus. But then, of course, there'll be more deferrals.
Thank you. Was there any other questions from the council members on Oates? Okay, thank you, Susan.
Okay. So I think I'll just end with, these are the 2 fixed routes that we are looking at. The first one connects to the Independence Transit Center. That would actually include weekend service, which is something that Lee Summit doesn't have currently. 2 vehicles every hour. And these were planned several years ago. And then the other one connects Longview Community College, 3 Trails Transit Center, and Grandview. And that would be weekday service. So basically where we sit with these are, until we can find other partners to kind of share the cost and kind of determine that the demand for the ridership is there, they're just kind of on the back burner right now. Just kind of keeping them in our back pocket. And that's all I have.
And I think that riders, I read something the other day about Overland Park is dropping some routes too because of declining. And
yeah, your fixed routes, your commuter express, their ridership has not rebounded. In fact, I think you're right. What you're reading is a trend across the metropolitan area and really probably across the country. Just ridership continues to drop on those types of services, while we see many gains in the demand services like Iris, like Oates, Uber, Lyft. You know, there's a lot of variety and options with regard to those door-to-door service providers.
Yeah. Questions from the council?
I can. So do we have anything besides like Lyft and Uber that goes to MCI, the airport?
No,
Okay.
no,
we
don't have any public subsidy transit between, really outside of Lee Summit. We don't have anything that connects besides this commuter service that runs just mornings and evenings from the park and ride lot to downtown Kansas City.
Okay, thank you.
So, Susan, going back to the slide right before this, are the fixed route transit service connect considerations? I mean, I think we've talked about this before. We're taking people out of Lee Summit. I never have anybody say, gosh, I wish I could get on a bus and go to Grandview. I've never had anybody say that to me. But I do have people saying, I wish I could take a bus from Legacy to Longview or from 150 up to downtown. So I don't know how we can have bus service internally first with fixed routes and then decide if we go regional. Because really, I never have anybody tell me they want to catch a bus to leave. And I don't think we want them to leave because we want them to spend their money here. So I don't know how we.
I think Lee Summit is so spread out that that a fixed bus service doesn't work well. You know, they work well in Kansas City, like the inner Kansas City, because everybody lives very close within, you know, walking distance of the bus stops. And, you know, trying to locate bus stops in Lee Summit, I mean, it would be difficult, I think, because it's just so spread out. You might have to walk quite a bit to get to a stop.
But what I hear you saying is this won't work very well either, is what I'm hearing. Because this is more spread out.
I think getting people to Longview has potential. I don't know about, I think if you can get them to the Three Trails Transit Center, that connects them to Johnson County, and there's a lot of jobs in Johnson County.
So somebody rides a bus from Lee Summit to Independence to get on a bus to go to Johnson County. That's
well, this would be the route they would take if you're going Johnson County. You go to Three Trails Transit Center, and then they have express routes to Johnson County from that transit center. Yeah, you wouldn't go up to Independence Transit Center to hit Johnson County, Kansas, and that workforce. But I mean, to your point, no, I don't think we will, at least not my foreseeable future, see the demand for commuter service within our city limits. Just not nearly enough density or jobs for that to happen to make it, you know, reasonable. I do think that what we lack is a connection to the regional transit operation. There's really just one of these two options might be enough to meet that demand that exists. It's a very limited demand, though. I mean, it really is. You're talking about commute, and what you need is to connect it on schedules that meet those demands, which vary throughout the day. That's why you're looking at hourly headways Monday through Sunday, right, every day of the week for those business hours. So you can choose, I'm going to go out to eat and ride if that's the case. But I don't know. Unless we get partnership, it makes no sense for the city of Lee Summit to pay for all of this on their own. And so far, we haven't been able to get any partnerships.
well, and I love the OAT service. I mean, I know people who use that to get to work, you know, because they don't drive, and I think it's such a great service. So whatever we can do to continue supporting that, I'd be in favor of. Thank you.
And on the point of connecting, I mean, we really don't know because we don't track the riders of those express routes. But I'll go out on a limb. I'll assume that some people ride those in the morning and actually connect and not go downtown. I mean, they may stop at Crown Center and go someplace else, or maybe stop at Crown Center and take the streetcar to the river, you know, and then just make it back to Crown Center while the bus is coming back. I mean, there's probably connections made on those express routes that we don't even know about.
True. There's also options for ride share. KCATA on their website, they have opportunities for ride share. You can try to find carpools, van pools, that kind of stuff. That service is available on their website as well.
Will we have any other questions on the transit? Thank you, Susan. It's always interesting. I mean, it's always every year, but it's very interesting. Moving people. All right, we'll move right into round table then. Is there any round table? Dia's got the round table.
Okay, so hour in downtown Lee Summit, it goes out quite a bit, and it was just out the other morning for like 2 hours, and that's the second time. Like, it was out, I think, like 3 weeks before that. Not quite as long. But so when I talked to Evergy and when a lot of people, well, and then I also had a constituent reach out to me that she was like in her motorized reclining chair, and she was stuck the entire time, and that was the second time she's been stuck in a month because the power's gone out, so she just has to wait it out. But so when I talk to Evergy, they say, well, it's because the power grid's overloaded and above ground power lines. But they say that Well, the workers say that it's on Lee Summit. I don't know, is it on Lee Summit to fix that? Is it on Evergy to fix that? Or what? I know that downtown Lee Summit is adding a lot of potentially apartments across the street. What can be done about a power grid that's overloaded?
It is more so. I'm not going to say there's no relationship to above ground. There's obviously going to be power outages due to above ground, but it's because their grid isn't built for the demands. It is overloaded. That's why you're seeing power loss that happens. And absolutely, that's not on the city of Lee Summit. It's not our responsibility to make sure that their grid, their infrastructure is built to manage the growth of our community. They are very much involved in every development application that comes through from the standpoint those developers are coordinating their power demands with the utilities, just like they're coordinating if they need gas service, if they need telecommunications. They're coordinating those. That's what developers do. Developers don't just work with the city of Lee Summit as an entity. They work with a lot of other agencies too. So that's up to Evergy as the owner of their utility to manage that growth in a way that I guess prevents a lot of these brownouts and blackouts that are happening.
Then how can we have a meeting with them? I mean, what can we do? Anything? I mean, we can't just continue to let people just lose power and have people stuck in their power recliners. I don't know what can be done.
That's a really good question. We can brainstorm, see if there's anything that we can do, whether that's getting involved at the Missouri Public Service Commission. I also imagine they're probably challenged by some of the same things that we are challenged with. If they can't get transformers, they can't get parts, supplies, they can't get labor. That can create delays in the projects they may already have funded or in the pipeline to improve their grid, to improve their infrastructure. So I try to also be understandable that we're not working in that environment alone. They're probably also experiencing some of those difficulties. So even though they have plans to improve their grid, they may not be able to implement those plans like we would hope they could. But I mean, I think a lot of their, even rate structures are being designed in ways to help minimize the overloading of their system as well as the funding to make system improvements. And so if we can support, if they're asking for reasonable increases in rates or different rate plans to help minimize those disruptions, I think that's where maybe we can get involved. But I don't think there's any way for the city to get involved in directly funding their projects. I wouldn't say that. And I don't think there's any way we can control the prioritization of their projects either.
I definitely want to be more involved just because of the whole example that Kansas City was the one area that couldn't opt out of the ridiculous new rate plans that they just implemented, and the entire rest of the state could. So I definitely think it's important that as a city we're involved. I wish Kansas City was involved.
I know
Maybe
they're
they
making
are.
improvements. I remember it was about a year ago they were doing a lot of work on the east side of town from one of their substations at Legacy Park or near Legacy Park. And they were redoing and upsizing their lines, if you will, from that substation in towards downtown. A few years ago they were doing other substation improvements, and that's really where they got to get a lot of their infrastructure upgraded. It's because that's when they start to lose their power.
I know it's not a new problem in downtown Lee Summit. It's been going on since I've lived here, so yeah.
Not a new problem there or up around the Woods Chapel 470 area. We struggle to keep power, like some of those signals. You think Ralph Powell and at Woods Chapel, it's always getting dark because they'll get this peak demand and they just can't service everything.
And then they are hard workers. They're always so nice when they come out, but yeah, they definitely are out a lot. So, all right, thank you.
Any roundtable from staff?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Huh? Oh, Mia's got something else? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I actually just remembered it, but thank you. Okay, so, and this might be a question more for Mr. Dunning, I don't know, but as far as the litter plan goes, I've had quite a few emails lately asking what the future plan is, because I guess 470 is just as bad as it was. Somebody said there's a couch maybe up towards Longview, just on the side of the road. Like, the litter's bad again. So what's our plan for sustaining, like, not trash on the side of the highways?
So, yeah, again, I think you're probably speaking towards trash on the highways, more so than trash on our local roads. So I believe it's part of a much broader legislative agenda item to support funding requests that had in the last year and years previously been denied to agencies like MoDOT, who would like to contract more litter control and cleanup of their highway system. So I think that was one of 3 legislative priorities to help support MoDOT and their funding requests, and that's one of their annual funding requests.
Well, I guess, I mean, more like on a local level, what we can do is, can our police officers write tickets for people littering? Like, is that something, and last time I asked Mr. Dunning about it, I guess they said that maybe you guys are working on a plan or something, but I don't.
We did. We had several strategies that we're still actively working on. We brought back Sweep the Summit. We had a spring event. We just had a fall event not too long ago. Again, that's not really focused on the state's system, but it does provide an opportunity for volunteers to get together and a platform for kind of having a day event to go pick up the highways, part of the Adopt a Highway program or Sponsor a Highway program where they can get involved. One of the other strategies was to increase enforcement of uncovered loads, particularly commercial loads, and I believe our police department has been doing that. As part of their enforcement saturation, they're paying more attention to that and pulling over those vehicles. At least that's what I had heard last time we talked about it in June timeframe. We're having quarterly meetings to discuss these variety of strategies. I think one of the other strategies had to do with prosecutorial recommendations and whether or not community service hours would be something that the judge would take for litter control and pickup as part of those sentencing recommendations, which hadn't been done in the last several years in Lee Summit. There were others, just getting the message out and creating as part of the Sweep the Summit, just a web page of resource where people can get involved, how they can reach out to MoDOT, what MoDOT programs are available. So those are the strategies that we're working on and have been working on over the last year and a half.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then just to reiterate about the Lee Summit streets, we actually had an expansion item. I think it was 2 FTEs, but those were just primarily mowing, right, and maintenance rather than trash?
So, yeah, we had an expansion on right-of-way management. So it's not just mowing, weeding, and we had some seasonal employees that we brought in, some temporary part-time, as well as then we had an expansion of our right-of-way workforce, our operator positions that would help. And some of that is to pick up some litter, some bulk items prior to us mowing our right-of-ways, but not the state's, which I hadn't heard a lot of litter complaints in the last several months. I asked our creative services, who usually gets a lot of those kind of litter complaints too. They said the volume had really dropped off significantly. So if you do still get them, forward them on to us so that we can send them to MoDOT as well, especially those bulky items. They are more receptive to respond to those items like a couch that could present a significant safety issue along their highway, as opposed to just trash. So if it's a bulky item, we know who to contact to get them out there, hopefully within a matter of 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Edson?
Yeah, 470 has gotten bad again. There was a crew out like Friday or Saturday. I couldn't figure out who it was, though. It's very mysterious. There was no MoDOT signs or anything. I don't know who it was. But they didn't pick up enough.
Yeah, I saw. There's a number of bags on the side, but I saw it was like 2 or 3 people in their fluorescent yellow vests, and I kind of wonder who that is either.
And Blue Parkway has got a lot of large items. I think stuff falls off of vehicles and trucks and things off on 350 that makes its way to the Blue Parkway, between 350. Not couches, not sofas and chairs, but just like windows, windows that fall, brand new windows are still on the box, but you see the glass and everything. Well, they're broken though. Burn the wood, I guess. Okay, no other roundtable from anybody? I will adjourn this meeting then at 6:04. Thank you.